Today's episode was inspired by a recent video put out by Beato and its subsequent follow-up. This won't be a critique or a breakdown, but it's pertinent enough that I thought that we'll mention it, and we'll put a link to his original video. But let's get into it. This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And like I said in the opening, it was inspired by his recent video, or the real reason music is getting worse. And for anyone who's not seen that video or isn't going to watch it and just watching us, the gist of his video was 2 points. And that is, music is easier to make now and music is easier to consume now. And those are two of the reasons of why we're getting worse products. And so we're just going to kind of throw our 2 cents into the ring on this and see where that goes.
Yeah. We both have backgrounds in music. We're both musicians. And we're both great lovers of music, of many genres. So we felt this was a pertinent issue for us that's close to our hearts. And being slightly older than the crowd that music is generally made for. It's always targeted toward mid to late teens. Maybe even 12 to 13, unless it's absolute bubblegum pop, that could go skew a little younger. And so here we are.
But to address his points first, for the most part, I agree with him, but I think a better way of looking at it, instead of saying that music is getting worse, is that music is getting stagnant, because there's still a lot of good music to be found. So it's not completely dead, but even in the most popular songs out now, they're sampling from older songs. Mm-hmm. So it's not that it's bad, it's just that it's not fresh, I guess.
I don't think it would be unfair to say the mainstream music industry is getting worse as to what they're pushing and what gets the most play and money, support from the mainstream music, because they're just thinking about what can be a big hit right now. What do we want to push right now? And there's a lot of indie pop and not indie pop, indie rock, just your basic indie music out there that you have to dig and sift through. And then when you find a band that musicians love, that they know about and you've never heard of before, but it's they all know about them. I think I've mentioned Sparks before. Edgar Wright knew about this band, and he plays these interview clips where it's every musician you've ever loved or know and love Sparks. And it's how did I miss this? How is it not in the mainstream? Paul McCartney has this, I can't remember the song. Paul McCartney has a song where in the video he dresses as famous other musicians and celebrities, and one of the Sparks brothers is one of the ones he puts on a mustache and does his famous kind of look. That's Paul McCartney, a Beatle. But somehow, and that was in the early 80s, and somehow Sparks have still never broken the mainstream.
Yeah, because I've heard you mention them, I think, once before. I don't remember if we were on air or not, but still not sure who they are.
Yeah, and I only know because Edgar Wright made this amazingly long documentary. Take that how you will. I love Edgar Wright. That doc was long, but it needed to be because it was completely comprehensive, and they're still going, and they've been around since, I think they formed in the 60s, and their first record I think came out in the very early 70s. And I mean, my girlfriend is all the time finding new music because she'll go on tangents where she's listening to something and then looks, sees what the algorithm scattershots into that with similar or bands or sounds, and that's how she got into, of course I knew about the Shins, but I was never really into them, and that's how she got into the Shins, the Decemberists, and then offshoots from a bunch of other things that I would have never heard of and are definitely not on the radio and are definitely not on, the radio is a big problem too. I mean, it carried me through the 90s, but even then we had issues. Here we live in Kentucky, it's classic rock. The good classic rock station plays Metallica, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and Leonard Skinner way too much. And even then the same songs.
Yeah.
The same songs from those bands way too much. Variety, we need more variety.
It's like, these bands have like multiple albums. It's like, pick something.
Yeah, you don't have to play Enter Sandman right at 6:15 every night.
But I seen someone talking, and I don't remember who. It's been a couple years since I was looking at this, but it said that the 90s was like the beginning of the end for, I guess, like variety, or at least mainstream variety.
Well, we reached like a huge peak with that.
Well, I think their reasoning was, or like what they showcased was that it was around the mid 90s to the end of the 90s when there was a switch in how music was produced.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of like Rick's points. I don't think he specifically said the 90s, but he was talking about the digital tools and stuff that we have now. It's like you can make these songs like essentially perfect, or what they consider perfect. And by doing that, you're making them all the same. There's no nuances, there's no variety, at least in what's on the air. And so it's just whatever's easiest and catchiest, throw out. And I think that's visible with everything we got, which I think is kind of a shame, because where music is easier to produce, we should have more creativity because more people has access to it.
Right, but here's the rub and where we start to sound old and also, I know I'm gonna get hate for this, but looking at how things have, where they are now, and all the problems with Spotify and how nobody gets paid for their music, and I've watched a lot of analyses on this. Maybe Lars was right or wrong. Napster, the advent of Napster and file sharing online, which was always going to be the case, and same with YouTube, it fundamentally changed how we consume music forever, fundamentally changing the music industry forever, or at least the foreseeable future. So if you have, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about how hard it was to get, and on a basic level, if it's harder to get something, you appreciate it more, right? And like, I had only a certain amount of cassettes and CDs when, it's like it costs money. Like, it wasn't just like $1. So like, you got one song, you go out and spend $1 on one song, or you can just pull it up on Spotify or your Apple streaming if you have whatever you pay for, unlimited service, or i.e. your parents pay for, and you can just have any song you want and play it as much as you want. We had to like go out to the store and buy a record, CD, cassette, 8-track. I think that's it. Or what you said the other night when we were talking about this, record.
Oh yeah, like be there with your recorder, get your songs off the radio.
Yeah.
Old school mixtapes.
Or when a friend came over, you could dub it from tape to tape. They even had some tape decks, if you were lucky enough, had a special high-speed dubbing button so that it would like play it faster and record it for you. It would sound a little off, but you got a whole album really fast.
Yeah, because I've done that. Not cassette to cassette, but my cousin, I would take her CDs and then
later
make the cassettes off of it.
Yeah, and then later in the 90s, we had CD burning. Some CDs had like some sort of protection on them. I think it's worth pointing out, artists traditionally don't get a lot of money per record. That's or singles or whatever. Like, CDs are super cheap to make. It's a tiny bit of plastic. Same with cassettes. It's a tiny bit of plastic. It's just reprinted again and again. Same with vinyl. Bit of cardboard. That's it. Unless you have some cool special design that you've dumped extra money into to make it more collectible or whatever. That's why some bands reduce as much as they can to make it cheaper to make, and so they can put out more records, or but they don't get much money off of that. Where they get money is like when they sell merchandise at an event and selling tickets. But it's visibility. Who knows about you if nobody's got your record, or if there's no way to take home your record and listen to it, or if it's just not there. Well, and now we don't have that same market because find me online. Again, how the almighty algorithm decides some of this as to what gets pushed into whose face. So, and then you find out about some band, like Allison played this band for me called Royal Blood. They've been out for maybe a little over 10 years, I think, and it's a rock duo similar to the White Stripes, but like much more harder rock. And they've played festivals, and like you look, and of course it's really impressive when you play a festival because you get footage of yourself playing in front of like what looks like a huge stadium, even though your normal venue on your own might be very small. gigs like Bogart's in Cincinnati. Totally fine. It's good to pay your dues. And it's also great story to tell when you get to see a band like that and you've seen them in a small place, because it's such a great venue to see an up-and-coming band. So back then, if you had to really if you only had a certain amount of money and you had to go out and hundreds of things to choose from, but you want to complete your Zeppelin or Tom Petty collection or Queen and Bowie in my case, and you have to pick between certain albums or best ofs, and you go home and consume it, and you read all the liner notes and you read all the lyrics, and it was something to have. We're also big fans of physical media here, which is another huge issue that ties in with how music is distributed these days.
Because I would say even my consumption has kind of become stagnant. Because like you said, you'd sit down with the case inserts. So it's like you'd buy the CD or cassette for one song. And then you're like, well, I don't have anything else. So you listen to the rest of it. Then a lot of CDs, not all, but some would come with the lyrics and stuff. And those were always the best. And so you'd sit down and explore it and listen to it.
Mm-hmm. And see who's singing the wrong lyrics. You inevitably have that one friend that wants to argue with you that he knows the lyrics are right. You have to shove that booklet in his face.
But even now, YouTube, I feel like they don't recommend to me new music as frequently. It's just hey, you listen to this song, you want to listen to it 10 more times?
Yeah.
And so it's what do? I listen to that song 10 more times.
Or live, or an acoustic version.
Yeah. And I used to just seek out music and find new bands and stuff. And I feel like that has drastically slowed down. And I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's just what I have access to thing, or...
For me, it's finding something that's as good as what I remember, and nothing's as good as I remember. When I became into my 20s, I found Muse had existed, but they were much less known, and they're bigger in England. I discovered Muse. I got into Jack White, or the White Stripes, and in turn Jack White. I thought he was kind of part of a huge new kind of alternative, hipster rock or whatever. It was the Strokes, the Vines, the White Stripes, a bunch of other, for me, hard to describe. But the White Stripes were clearly a cut above, whereas not all of their songs sounded the same, as opposed to some of those other bands that I just mentioned. And if you love them, good for you. I'm not here to trash any bands. That's not what this discussion's about. I felt like the White Stripes were headed in weirder directions, which I was more interested in. Even though they were only a duo. Live, he plays guitar, sometimes a bit of keyboard, and she plays drums. And that's pretty much it, except for the few other times she might bang on something else. And I was kind of against this on principle, because I love these huge operatic sounds Queen would give, or a band a lot of prog rock. And so to hear something so stripped down, but hearing the use of his instrumentation, how he maximized the minimalization of it, and also his influences were blues-based and classic rock and country even. It came out in what he produced. That made me a lifelong fan of at least his music. And, with Muse, the polar opposite, they were a lot of people compared them to Radiohead. I don't get that. They're much harder rock than Radiohead, but people do not take no for an answer on there. Oh, they're just a Radiohead ripoff. What?
It's what songs are you listening to?
Yeah, if you only put on the Bends, that one rock song off that album, okay, yeah, they sound kind of like that on their first record. That one song. Anyway, they're clearly, obviously more influenced by Queen. It's his layering of vocals, how loud he wants to get the guitar. They just have more rock songs than now. That might not be the case necessarily. They've leaned more into ballads and electronic music, but still.
I think that's something good to point out is what bands sound like, because most bands today sound like every other thing out today, which doesn't necessarily make it bad. It just doesn't make it stand out.
Yeah.
Because from like the 60s up to the 90s, if you play me a song, I can probably tell you at least what band it is, if not the song and band.
It's weirder when you hear a song and somebody says, this is from 1991 or 2, and you're like, well, what is it?
Yeah.
How is it that I don't know this?
Because, again, I don't have a complete knowledge of all the music from 40 years. But on the whole, I can pick out the bands, or at least if the singer were in multiple bands, I can pick out the singer. But they've got their own style, their own feel. Whereas now it's just like, this doesn't sound bad. It is not unpleasing to me, but I don't know who you are. It's like you could be any other rock band out there. You could be any other pop band out there. And that's why you do gravitate to someone like Muse, because they do stand out. But now that's also kind of hard to say. Muse has been around for a while now. So it's like, are they new? Would you consider them new? Because a lot of people probably wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've been around like 20 plus years at this point.
Because that's what I was thinking about some of the bands that I was like, who sticks out to me? Who have I listened to recently that I've actually sat down with their music? And it's not been many. And it's like, well, when did they come about? A lot longer than I thought. Because one of the bands that I frequent, because they stand out to me, is Poets of the Fall. And I only found them like 6 or 7 years back, but they've been around since the mid 2000s. They got their start doing a couple songs for one of the Max Payne games on PS2. But their music does stand out because just lyrically is above a lot of what is out today. And like they live up to that name of Poets. So
yeah, I mean, the most recent band, like me and Allison have been listening to, is like Royal Blood, and I looked into it. They have, I think, just four records in 10 years, and I was like, whoa, that's like a 10 plus year old band from now. Not that old, but it's not like they're right off the bat too. Sucks when you find like something and you find out they're already broken up.
Yeah.
Or the singer's already dead, or something like that. Like, you should listen to this thing from 30 years ago. Or, like Queen, what's their story? Well, don't worry about that. Just listen to the music. That doesn't end well for any of them. Anyway, yeah, and obviously, I'd be remiss not to mention, because of our recent review video, Ghost. It's a huge, like, multifaceted band that has, like, a fictional story that they follow, and their real life story is almost just as interesting. So, anyway, they've been around since, I mean, like 2006 is when he really started, and then, like, on into the teens is when they started, like, getting more and more popularity and just really pushing, especially in the U.S. They're bigger in Europe and their home area first, which is the home country of Sweden. What's right out there right now, I don't know. It's hard to say, it's like I think the best way might be supporting music live, going to see somebody and see who a known quantity brings with them, or giving like an unknown quantity a chance.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing too, is America, we need to step it up. Because when I was preparing for this video, I was thinking, what more modern bands, or like what bands are out now that stand out to me. And most of them are from Europe. There's some that's from America, but for the most part, Europe. So yeah, we need to step it up. But as far as seeing them live, I think that comes down to greed on the most part, because you got like Ticketmaster and stuff like that jacking the prices up on stuff. Because I don't remember who it was. I think Finn McKenty from Punk Rock MBA maybe was the one talking about this. He said that people used to go to more shows because tickets were cheaper. But now that all these ticket prices are skyrocketing, they only go to maybe one show a year instead of like 4 or 5 shows a year. And that puts out like the newer bands, because it's like, what are you going to spend that money on? A known quantity, or somebody that you have no idea who is?
Yeah. Whereas, like, you used to be able to just go, you know, if you went to a punk show and there's 3 or 4 bands playing, you know, at like a local theater or club or whatever, like, you could just do that. And there probably are still venues where you could do that, but like at the medium to larger places, if there's a newer band or like a group of bands that you don't know as well that you used to be able to take an easier chance on, it is so much harder. And I mean, I guess if we stopped eating our avocado toast and you know, $17 coffees, we could probably afford to go to 7 or 8 more shows a year. That's how the economy and money works, right? No. Ticketmaster sucks, and they're siphoning the life, literally, pun intended, out of live music. That's a whole separate topic. But let's talk about how music is literally made. I had what was, it was essentially an 8-track. It wasn't an 8-track like how you think of it. It was a 4-track that was kind of tricked up. It was a Tascam, like that medium-sized one, the blue one. And you could bounce tracks, like, you're gonna sacrifice some quality if you go for all 8 tracks. Which I did, because I wanted to get ideas down, as opposed to making sure the quality was high, because that was not gonna be, these were just ever gonna be demos on this. It wasn't gonna be digitally recorded. Whereas, like, I knew people who were recording on computers and unlimited tracks, and they could make them sound really good, but their ideas weren't as good. I'm no genius. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't take much to just sound better and then fool the ears into thinking like, wow, you've put a lot of work into this. Actually, no, they haven't. So when it's harder to do something, this is just basic. Even people can joke about it. Like when you work really hard on preparing a meal, you feel like it tastes better. Even if you something up, you worked really hard on it, and you're like, this is amazing, through your tears and hard work. It's the same with music. We don't appreciate things because everything is disposable. Even if it's your favorite song, it is disposable by virtue of you did nothing to get it. You clicked on a YouTube video and now it's your new favorite song. How are you going to get it again? Click on that video again. It is so easy. And if it ever becomes your least favorite song, forget it. Forget you ever had it. You didn't invest in going to the store, picking an album, getting that album, finding a new favorite deep cut, putting up a poster on your wall that the album came with, maybe. Going to a show. There's none of that. It's just click. That's it. We don't appreciate things anymore in this. I know I sound old. I know I do. And my voice sounds weird today. I'm aware of it. You don't have to point that out in the comments. But do like, share, and subscribe. And point it out in the comments. Comment all you want. It's engagement. Give the thumbs down. Tell us you hate us. None of this matters.
Don't give us a thumbs down, though. It makes
just
me feel bad.
Click that and then switch it to the thumbs up so you've clicked it twice. If you don't, I don't have any solutions. I'm just saying, actually, there are solutions. You can still go to the store. I was at CD Central in Lexington, Kentucky, just last week. There used to be 5 record stores here in Richmond. I'm not going to name them all. I could. And I mean, I think at one time, like right in the late 90s, before, and I loved Hastings, but Hastings came, and then there became all of a sudden, there were just 2 places that you could get CDs or records in town. Hastings, which had a decent amount and quality, or not quality, but quantity, variety, decent, not amazing, but, you know, a good amount for like a corporate thing. And Walmart. Nobody wants to buy CDs from Walmart, even though they're cheaper than everywhere else. You also run the risk, if there just happens to be something that someone deems censorable, it's going to be censored, and nobody wants a censored record. So anyway, not to say that I haven't gotten my fair share of CDs from Walmart over the years. I think I got my first Queen's Greatest Hits from Walmart when I was 13. But I'm just saying, you can still find a record shop. You can still go to them. Sometimes you can even support those local places by just ordering from them. If you don't live near enough from them, you can contact them and see if they'll ship to you, because they just might. And just to say, like, look, I really want to support you. I want to give my money to you and not some corporate shill, so that I would just like to know that you're there in the future when I can come to you and I can sit and like say hi, thumb through the records. I swear to God, like for me, when I've had some of my serious anxiety in years past, nothing made me feel better on days like that than going into a record shop and just looking through, just thumbing through the CDs and vinyl, seeing what they had and didn't have, looking for new stuff, and just go, like zoning out and just getting into that mind frame. Anybody who's ever done this knows it's not like quite like anything else. And if you're not a music nerd, maybe you don't get it, or you think this is stupid, but I swear to God, it's immaculate. That feeling you get, like seeing, I've got this one. Oh, I haven't listened to this one in a while. I've got to dig it out. It's at home. Or you thinking like, wait, did I let somebody borrow that? I got to get that back.
Not to mention the album art.
Sometimes you forget.
Yeah.
Like I've got a stack of CDs, and I mean literally just a stack of CDs, and the cases and artwork, the booklets are in another box. So we rarely look at that or appreciate how good some of them are. And people still work really hard on them. It might even be like a design by committee to see what's, going to attract a certain type of audience or whatever, and that might not be the best. And that, I'm not saying that's everybody, I'm just saying that might be something that people think about more so now, especially with pop groups. But there are still people who work really hard on amazing album art. That's an art unto itself. The photography, or sometimes literally a painting, or you can find Easter eggs and see what movies they're into by knowing what references they're trying to make. And you can really make it's bad to say judge a book by its cover, but sometimes I've bought albums from bands I didn't know because I thought the album art was cool and been pleasantly surprised.
To counterpoint, though, we're not saying that the technology is necessarily bad, because I very much enjoy having music at my fingertips at all times. And even with music production, it's definitely easier than it used to be. Because, that's what allows us to do this podcast, is having access to those kind of tools that connect to the computer. And for me personally, I don't have the money or the space for a whole lot of equipment or a suitable environment to play those. So the technology gives me access to something I would not have had I not.
Yeah, especially one thing I'm grateful for is being able to see any number of live performances, and because that was always something that was like a holy grail back in the 80s, 90s. It's what you saw on TV, or if you could buy a VHS. How many bands put out like a lot of really great concerts, or like Pink Floyd's The Wall, which was not a concert. It was, like a movie concept combined with a concept album. And you didn't see it very often. Like not a whole lot of bands put out like sometimes they put out live albums, but not an accompanying.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The live albums, which does not compare to seeing them live.
Right.
Because the recording quality is not always there.
Yeah, a lot of them bad because they want to get a little bit of that crowd response. Whereas I want to hear what the band sounds like. That's it. I want to hear what the band sounds like. So there was some bootlegs out there where people got like the monitor, like the booth recording, where it's like, this is just the band live. And sometimes you can hear a little bit of a slight roar from the audience, like low way in the background. That was the best. But those are bootlegs. That's a whole other different thing. And you're not really taking away from the band because you're not undercutting sales. Some people would argue that yes, you are, because if they ever did decide, but hardcore, it's just the hardcore fans that are getting these like live bootlegs or live concert footage recordings, which now I think something that I kind of I meant to say about Ghost and Tobias with how he perceives. There's certain things that I felt like, well, this was a missed opportunity to like professionally, even if it was just professionally on his iPhone, or have somebody on the wings, or have somebody just with a slightly better camera. You wouldn't have to invest in like a whole camera crew, but like they've had events where he switched over, handed the reins over from one character to another, or certain things that have happened, and he never recorded them until now. But he didn't need to, because there's literally dozens of recordings of it that are on YouTube. He knew that the fan base was there and that they had him covered, because he knew the era he was living in. So as I say, I make the argument for and against, like when I think to myself, why didn't he do that? Because he knew that it's going to be preserved. And here's the better thing. It creates a sense of community in that fan base by sharing this information. Like, did you hear about this? The legend of this thing happening? Oh man, it would have been awesome to have been there. Well, we can look at it right now on YouTube, this version and this version and this version from different angles, because people put it out there. And that's an example of somebody knowing the era they live in and using it to its best function. You know, like you can make some really great music with the digital technology we have. I just, I think we've avoided AI. Don't want to get into AI today. That's another thing Rick Beato has been talking about recently, and that's a whole separate thing.
I think I will touch on AI a little bit, because I think that's a little bit of a misnomer that a lot of people using it or don't know about it is we call it artificial intelligence, but it's really not. Because there's the argument that if it's intelligent, it can't be artificial. And if it's artificial, it can't be intelligent. Because the AI does not create anything new. It just does what we were already doing with the music and sampling things that are already there. So yes, it is putting something together, but it's doing that from like a database. It's not thinking of anything. It's not creating anything. And so using AI might be faster, but eventually it's all going to sound the same, because it's going to get into a feedback loop where it's just sampling the samples and the samples and further that stagnation and homogenization. So yeah, that's my take with the AI and what people need to think about. Because yes, it could be a handy tool like anything else. But when we allow that tool to be the only function, because it's like with your guitar, you know, that's a tool. You have to make it sound good. You have to put that time into it. AI could be that tool, but you also got to realize what that tool does. Because with the guitar, you know, if you only use the same chords, it's like that's all you think you're getting out of that tool. And if you're letting AI control everything, that's the only thing you're getting out of that tool. So I think people just need to be mindful of what that is and what we're going to be getting out of it. And that corporations, and this has already started, is they're going to use that as a way to make money and not the artist, because they're already pulling all the strings with the streaming. Record companies already hold more power, and even though it's easier to self-produce these days, you don't have that prestige, I guess, and the money backing of these record companies. So just something to think about.
Yeah, think about it, Matt Bellamy. Make a better record next time. All right, I'm not going to talk about AI, because if I did, I wouldn't stop. Except to say, how far off do you think it is that we have like a completely fabricated band that's like, take, like John Lennon, Taylor Swift, Michael Jackson, something else, cram it into a blender and say like, make, because there's some executive out there that's already thinking this.
Yeah.
That's like, let's make the greatest band of all time and put out like an album of music. And I'm not saying all those people like in a band together. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying this is what somebody is saying. My idea would be better than that, and to say like elements of the greatest music of all time and make an eclectic album, because nobody wants to hear the same song 15 times, and then put that out. Also, stop making the last song on the album like a slow song and like a, not the ballad, but like something kind of like wistful or melancholic. Like, go out on a bang. Like, whatever your second song on the album is, make that the last song on the record. This goes for everybody. Every buddy. Stop doing that. Anyway, good. You can answer that question. You don't have to. It's coming. I'm worried. I'm not 100% sure those K-pop guys are real. I've not touched one of them. I've not met one of them in person. I think I've never met anybody that has either. I think it's a high possibility those guys are either mannequins or just holograms.
Yeah, there are some hologram bands out. But to answer your question, I think it's more of a money issue than a time issue of when we're going to get this. Because everybody's going to want to get money off of that. Mm-hmm. So it's like, who's going to have the money first to buy the rights for this?
Well, no, I'm saying, like, to just tell the computer to make new music and there it is, like, and it would be like completely new, like this new artist emerges out of nowhere, nobody's met him, he's completely mysterious because he's not real.
That's what I'm saying, is they might not be real and it's new music,
yeah,
but you're going to end up with a situation
copyright issues because it's thinking of things, but then you'd have to prove what it sounds like, and then we get into stuff like when was it John Fogerty, not John Fogerty, but the guy from Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah, John Fogerty.
Was John? Okay, he got sued by his record company because he sounded too much like himself.
Yeah.
On his solo records, and they own the copyright.
Then he had to go and prove that it wasn't.
Yeah, that like, oh, guess what? I sound like my self.
Same way with Led Zeppelin and Spirit. It's like you're using similar chord progressions, so you got a similar sound.
Yeah.
And Slippery Slope. It's like, that point, what are we copywriting? What? Because if you can copyright a chord progression, then nobody will ever be able to make music again. Because there's only so many.
Yeah, it puts an end to all things in that regard. And then Billy Corgan can finally write that song with only one note. I don't want him to.
He's probably already got in his back pocket.
He's already done it.
He's just not released it.
All right. Well, I don't know. You want to name off some new bands you think people should check out?
Well, I'm trying to think of, because is it like new to me bands or just new bands in general?
Both. Because, I mean, well, like I mentioned Royal Blood. And the few that I'm about to mention really come from my girlfriend because she scours to find something new. There's an even newer one that I can't think of the name, and they kind of sound like Southern dark, I don't know, kind of like a Mumford & Sons sort of thing, but it's like, it's pretty new, I think, and their music's pretty dark, and I can't think of their name, but there's a band called Mother Mother that sounds, I think, kind of like Plumtree, or, no, Social... I can't remember. It was a song off of the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. It reminded me of that. And they don't look anything like... It's like a brother-sister singing duo. The guy plays guitar, but they have a full band when they play. And when I finally saw them, I was like... It's weird when you only hear a band for a long time and you don't really dive into them. She's just playing this music all the time when we're in the car. And then I finally see them and I'm like, they don't look, this guy kind of looks like Vanilla Ice. This is not what I was expecting. And then I was expecting like a grunge looking teenage group with, I don't even know what, like loose baggy sweaters, and it was not what I got. And was it Fish in a Birdcage? I think that's another one that she's been listening to. They have some pretty cool stuff. Interesting sounds. And then Royal Blood, pretty good hard rock. If you're into hard rock, they actually had... When I was kind of like thumbing through some of their stuff, they had covered Sad But True. I think it was Sad But True on like that Metallica album where they put like the people covered the Black songs from the Black album like... too many times.
Well, I guess for me, again, these are like newish to me or things I don't hear people talk about as much. But I mentioned Poets of the Fall earlier. I think they're very much worth a listen to. Like, not every song is a hit, but they have enough that I think makes it worth it. Because everyone I've talked to either doesn't know who they are, knows about them because I've said something, or they're like, oh yeah, I did hear that one song on the Max Payne album. That was them. And they also did the music for the Alan Wake video game. But they went under the title Old Gods of Asgard. But that was them. So people are like, yeah, I know that, but I haven't heard the band. So them, I think one of the newer bands would be Spirit Box, if you're kind of more into the metalcore. And Again, a lot of the bands I've been listening to are like newer metal or new-ish metal. Not NU metal, but NEW metal.
Yeah. No, I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
The audience didn't, but I got you.
But I would recommend Sleep Token and Amaranth have been frequents of mine lately.
I don't know Amaranth, but Sleep Token, if you're a fan of Tool, check out Sleep Token. They have a similar feel, and I maybe not like 1-to-1 or anything, but if you already like Maynard, I think you'd like Sleep Token a lot.
Yeah. And I've been listening to a lot of Maneskin lately. They're just fun. I don't know how that falls into the new music, but
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Zeal and Ardor. Up and coming, I think that he's also from Sweden. If you're a fan of Ghost and or eclectic music and sometimes even harder music, more metal, even black metal. Sometimes they're not black metal all the time, at least. He's kind of steering it into a new direction, like what Bowie did with oftentimes with genres, when he would do a genre record and take pre-existing genre and try to do something with his twist on it and then blend it with some other things and then do something else the next time. The Zeal and Ardor, Manuel Gagnon, I think he is gonna be that's gonna be a big deal in the next few years. He's getting bigger and bigger and about to release a new record, and I've been listening to a lot of old Run DMC. That's not new.
Yeah. Most of the stuff I've been listening to is also older music. But if you want to get weird with it, I would recommend Native Howl.
Native Howl?
Yeah, Howl, like Wolf Howl.
Oh, Howl. Okay.
Yeah. They're not the best band out there, but they are definitely different. Think if Metallica played bluegrass, and that's what this band is.
Bluegrass is already a lot of like the metal, the speed metal of country music.
Yeah, they call this particular brand thrash grass.
Thrash grass. I do. I actually really love. I don't love banjo just for banjo's sake, but Steve Martin's band, the Steep Canyon Rangers. I just, when somebody can play an instrument to a virtuoso.
A friend of mine growing up actually played banjo, and he's actually played at Renfro Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know how often he still plays. I've not talked to him since graduation, but
I was never good at finger picking, so I never even picked one up because I knew I would not be. I would never get good at it because I was never good at. I got some of the finger picks and I tried from time to time, but I just didn't do it early or soon enough to really learn it, to do like the clawing and stuff. So I never got into that, and that's why I have a lot of respect for people who can.
My finger picking extends to playing bass.
Yeah, and that's so much so that I use a pick if I play bass. I don't even like to use my fingers at all, even if it's just the walking man. So, and I mentioned Ghost earlier, and mentioned Ghost a whole lot on that review episode that apparently got some attention.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was surprised, given how our last few videos have.
Maybe we should review Taylor Swift next.
That could either be our break, but which direction? Will it be our breakthrough or the breaking of us when the Swifties come down on us? Yeah, that's the question.
You got anything else?
Not without just running in circles.
Yeah, me too.
I guess my biggest takeaway is, yes, music's kind of going in a stagnant direction, but it doesn't have to. If you're a creator, hey man, get weird with it. Don't let people tell you what you have to produce. Produce what you want to produce, because that's my biggest thing. Even if it's not great, if it comes from your heart, it's already better than most of the stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I will listen to a subpar singer that is pouring their heart into it than someone that has exquisite vocals that has nothing.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to say just one more thing. I think another thing that's music in the past 20-25 years is American Idol. American Idol. People who thought of it, and don't watch American Idol. Okay, I burnt my bridge with Steven Tyler. Like when I grew up, when I was a kid, I was a big Aerosmith fan. I still think they're one of the best. Brad Whitford and Joe Perry, two of the best like meshed guitar players that have like totally different styles. They blend them well. Great partners for riff rock. And Steven Tyler still has one of the best ranges of vocals that there's been. I love his rasp. It's a good rock rasp. When they do rock music, they oftentimes have veered away from some stuff. Nine Lives, still such a great like alternative rock record. It's kind of an outlier in their catalog, much less all their classic stuff. Then he goes on American Idol. Now here's my thing with American. Why do I hate it so much? Think about, name 3 classic rock singers. They're like some of the best, not the best, but just like ones that come to mind.
Come to mind.
Mm-hmm. Just anywhere from 1970, 1985, 1965, 1985.
It's like, wow, my brain is just shut off.
Black Sabbath.
Yeah, Ozzy. Geddy Lee.
Oh, that's a good one. I wasn't thinking of him. That's a good one. And let's round it out with like Tom Petty.
Yeah.
These guys, I don't think would make it past the audition stage. I think they'd get made fun of and say like, oh, you've got, an interesting sound, but... Ugh.
Or they might push them through a couple rounds.
Yeah.
Just because they're
for
different.
Personality. Yeah. But what they're looking for is a very specific thing. And I'm going to also throw Steven Tyler into that mix. He wouldn't have made it through at any point in his career, I do not think. And I mean, I'm thinking like Roger Daltrey, even, it's like these guys are like technically good singers, but they don't have what they're looking for, this sound.
Yeah, because I was thinking Robert Plant. It's like
Robert Plant too is like on the forefront of my mind on that one. Amazing singer and still is. But how would he be perceived on American Idol? They're looking for pop singers for teenagers to listen to. And all the great singers from the past like 70 years have had interesting voices, something that sounds different. And, I'm thinking of like newer, like one of the earliest recordings of the White Stripes is at some bowling alley or something where I don't even know if it's an open mic or if they just let him set up in the corner and play some songs. And he does, one of the songs he does is Moon Age Daydream. I don't even know if there were any originals in this set, but you can hear the people who are recording him better than him. And at some point during this recording, I've never listened to the whole thing. You can hear a woman louder than him audibly say like, he sounds so weird. And he does. Yeah. He does sound weird, but that's what's interesting. I don't want to hear somebody sound like Pavarotti, like who's technically amazing, over and over and over. Yeah. I'd love to hear a nice rasp or a nasal snarl or, just like, James Hetfield's, then the same thing over and over again.
I like Dave Grohl's look at it. It's like, why do you want to sound like everybody else? Go sound like you.
Yep. And I'm getting back to your point, which you said, don't let anybody tell you what to sound like. American Idol tells people what to sound like and tells people what they should be listening to and what's good.
Who's the most successful people from American Idol?
The people who lost.
Yeah, exactly. Because Daltrey comes to mind. He's still doing pretty good as far as all those people that lost. Like he's working with bigger names now. He's just putting out new albums.
Yep. A worker. Yeah, somebody who is in it to play music and didn't mind putting in the work.
Yeah.
I respect that. So anyway, if you have a weird voice and you think, I could never be the singer, but you want to be the singer, work harder for it. Just work on it. Do it.
It's like, oh, I don't sound like these other people. Well, good.
Yeah.
Make your sound your sound.
That's how you rise to the top and be, if you sound like everybody else, like I mentioned, every era has like a Chris Cornell or a Kurt Cobain who was just screaming most of the time.
Yeah, maybe take a few vocal lessons and not be Kurt Cobain or you're going to kill your vocal cords.
That wouldn't hurt. But what I'm saying is there's dozens of other bands that sounded exactly like those bands, but they just sounded exactly the same. And that is why they did not rise to the top. And sometimes you catch a lucky break. There's either some media focus or some event that happens that gets you some attention. Sure.
It's like you might be able to ride the wave, but you can't transcend it.
Yeah, there's that too. Once you get up there, you got to have something that really makes people take a look and stick with you. So
that's why My Chemical Romance is still relevant now that emo has died down.
Yeah, because they were lumped in with that genre wave that came in like after like the hipster craze, like right around the time of the hipster craze, actually, like with that early to mid 2000s. Even when they weren't really that, it's like people always just still remember makeup and the hair and everything, but they kind of weren't that. They had more of like a classic rock sound than anything else, with, you know, a hard rock edge that was more modern. Their lyrics were dark. Yeah, is what I say. I wish they would put out a new album. They put out one new song, I think like a year and a half, 2 years ago at this point, and then went on tour. If you got all that time, write a new album. Anyway.
It's been too busy writing comic books.
Yeah, right. Producing TV shows. I appreciate that too. Slip one in. Just give us one. One song? I like that song though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess my final takeaway is, if you're a consumer of music, slow it down. Take time, appreciate, enjoy, work through a whole album.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as much for myself as I am to the audience, because I've not done this as much as I used to. And I kind of miss it, to be honest. But if you're a creator, then create. Don't let someone tell you what to create. Use whatever tools is available to you. If all you have is the digital, use it, but don't let it define you. Just remember that it's a tool, not the final product. Any other takeaways?
No, I think we said it all.
In that case, we'll wrap up here. If you made it with us this far, thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Be sure to follow us on social media. We don't post as often as we'd like to, but we're there. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave links in the description below. And until next time, see ya.